Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating case study on the architecture of the IECC Observatory. We're going to be looking closely at the source material to challenge a pretty big modern industry dogma, the idea that heavy, opinionated frameworks are automatically the best way to build web apps. Instead, we're focusing on how a lean, native approach can actually empower local economies, rather than just extracting value from them. It's a classic David versus Goliath story in web development.
So I want you to really think about this question for a second. Do we actually need all these bloated frameworks for modern applications? Right now in the global ecosystem, the vast majority of developers just automatically default to things like Next.js, React, Laravel, Django, or Ruby on Rails without a second thought. But the source material pushes back hard on this. We're going to explore how a lean, native architecture can deliver massive competitive advantages, especially for hyperlocal, decentralized solutions, compared to those giant extractive ecosystems dominating the market today.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the framework illusion, then cover lean architecture and Web 2.5, extreme performance and agility, sovereignty and zero vendor lock-in, surgical and transparent security, and finally, the hybrid future.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the framework illusion.
This right here beautifully illustrates the stark contrast between standard corporate tech stacks and the IECC standard. Think about modern bloatware for a minute. Frameworks today carry hundreds of third-party dependencies, those gigantic node_modules folders, requiring incredibly complex build processes and chewing through server RAM. The IECC, on the other hand, advocates for a surgically precise, lightweight, native PHP and vanilla JavaScript architecture. Because it's running on pure native code with minimal dependencies, the system executes requests in fractions of a millisecond. It barely sips resources, making it incredibly fast even on minimal Ubuntu servers or super economical shared hosting environments.
Moving right along to Section 2, let's talk about lean architecture and this really cool concept of Web 2.5.
To really grasp why this architecture was chosen, we have to understand its core philosophy, digital sovereignty. Basically, this is the imperative to build software that protects local purchasing power and local data. You see, the old Web 2.0 model extracts massive value. Just think about delivery apps taking up to 30% of a local bakery's margins. Pure Web 3.0 tries to fix this, but honestly, it often introduces a ton of friction with complicated wallets and gas fees. Digital sovereignty is about bridging that gap. It's about giving absolute control back to local ecosystems without all the technical headaches.
And that brings us to this brilliant strategic move by the IECC, which the source material calls the Trojan Horse concept. By using familiar Web 2.0 tech, just straightforward PHP and JS, they give everyday users and small business owners a completely frictionless, traditional web experience. But behind the scenes, this lightweight setup is actually provisioning advanced, decentralized Web 3.0 infrastructure. The user gets the ease of Web 2.0 while operating with the sovereignty and security of Web 3.0. It's completely seamless.
Which brings us to Section 3, extreme performance and agility.
So the most crucial thing to remember here is the number 0, as in 0 complex build steps, 0 Webpack configurations, 0 Vite compilations required just to make a minor tweak to your app. When you strip away all that framework bloatware, you eliminate the friction that slows down development and absolutely drains your server's memory.
The workflow here is just incredibly straightforward and agile. You write your code in pure JavaScript and modern PHP, you upload it directly to the server, and boom, it executes instantly. This agility of a direct deploy means that any changes to your front end or back end go live immediately. You aren't sitting around waiting for heavy build pipelines to finish, you're delivering immediate value for local ecosystems with absolute peak efficiency.
Let's move on to Section 4, sovereignty and zero vendor lock-in.
Have you ever felt trapped by the tools you use? When you rely on heavy, opinionated frameworks like Next.js or Laravel, you often fall into what's called the framework trap. You get locked into their specific update cycles, you suffer through breaking changes, and you're at the mercy of their community politics. Conversely, the IECC's modular, standardized web patterns guarantee true code durability. Native PHP and vanilla JS are going to function for years without requiring forced expensive rewrites just because some third-party library was deprecated. Your code is completely independent and it remains entirely yours.
All right, on to Section 5, surgical and transparent security.
In a lot of complex frameworks, things like magical routing and database abstractions act as black boxes.
They can hide vulnerabilities, or at the very least, make security audits a total nightmare. The IECC's lean architecture takes the exact opposite approach. By using explicit prepared statements via native PDO and incredibly strict session validations based on the user ID, every single line of defense is transparent. You've got immediate 403 blocking mechanisms and solid shielding against third-party ID manipulation. It's surgical. Nothing is hidden behind layers of abstraction, giving you absolute engineering control over your security.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, the hybrid future.
This highlights the hybrid power approach. A major takeaway here is that you don't have to force one language to do absolutely everything. The ICEC uses native PHP 8.5 as the orchestrator. It's perfect for incredibly fast web delivery, managing dashboards, and handling API routing. But then it seamlessly calls out to Python or Go for the heavy lifting, things like local AI processing or running complex predictive mathematical matrices offline. It's all about using the exact right tool for the exact right job to maximize both speed and capability.
As the source material so powerfully states, PHP really isn't just some legacy tech. It is the silent, reliable backbone of the web. In this context, it acts as a literal tool of emancipation for decentralizing economic power. It allows a local merchant to escape the fiefdom of massive corporate platforms and build their own digital castle, totally free from extractive middlemen. It truly is the democratization of development in its purest form. So as we wrap up, I want you to evaluate your own tech stack with this final question. Are you building software for the framework, or are you building it for your sovereignty? I highly recommend considering the true long-term cost of vendor lock-in versus the undeniable power of building lean, agile, and truly sovereign software. The IECC Observatory proves that sometimes the most revolutionary step forward is actually returning to lean, transparent, and fully controlled fundamentals. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.